Good morning, Lisa, and good morning to those of you who are joining us for this edition. How are
Good
you?
morning, Dewey. I'm great, and welcome to Tennis Takeaways with Lisa and Dewey. I'm Lisa Stone, creator of Parenting Aces, and I'm so pleased to be here with Dewey Evans. And Dewey, I'll let you introduce yourself to our viewers today.
I'm Duey Evans. I am a performance architect, and what that means is I help people lead their best lives and become their best selves. We're going to have a guest with us today, and his name
Yep.
is Bob Davis. Bob is has a long history in tennis. He was the leader of Arthur Ashe's, well, started as the Ashe Bolletary Cities program, which moved into being the Safe Passage Foundation. He also created a program called Black Dynamics at the IMG Academy, where a percentage of the revenue which came from adults going and doing programs there was used as scholarships for young black athletes. And out of that group of kids came a couple of young ladies who played Fed Cup for the U.S., as well as those who went on to both be college coaches and have great college careers. And Bob, to this day, works with IMG and Nick Bolletary. He was co-author of Nick's recent biography, and great to have him. He is a tennis historian and someone that I think we can all learn from. Welcome, Bob.
Introduction.
How are you today?
I am well. It's I live in Florida, as you know, so and it's 95 degrees out. So it's nice to be sitting in front of this computer.
I hear you there. What are you up to these days? Are you still actively involved in the sport of tennis?
Well, I play a couple of times a week still, and I still manage my Panda Foundation. It's a 5 created back in 2000, helping urban children learn how to play tennis and stay out of trouble. And now I am president of Bolletary Tennis and Learning program, which um, models itself after the Safe Passage Foundation, with the caveat that I could not have achieved before that, and that is that we've reached an agreement with the University South Florida that every child that graduates from our program with a 3.0 GPA will get a scholarship to college, which is a
Wow,
remarkable accomplishment in my life.
Not a
that's
tennis
amazing.
scholarship, just a generic scholarship, whether or not they
Not
play tennis.
not a tennis scholarship, not a scholarship.
Okay,
If they graduate with a 3.0 GPA, they will get a free ride to the University of South Florida.
that's awesome.
Wow.
That is awesome.
Now all we got to hope is that colleges still exist when those kids are graduating, right?
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, I hope you're right.
So, can we go back a little bit to how you got started in tennis and what that looked like?
Well, I got started in playing tennis when I was 8 years old. My brother Bill, who is living in California now, is 14 years older than me, and as he got drafted into the Marines, he wanted to make sure that I stayed on the straight and narrow path, and handed me off to his tennis coach Sidney Llewellyn in New York City, and that was the decision that changed my life forever. As you can, as you know, I started it, and I'm still in the business. I'm still playing, and I'm still um, committing my life to helping children.
Can I ask you what tennis looked like for you when you were a child? Were there other young black men and women getting involved in the sport? And what did the competition side of it look like for you?
Well, yes. To answer your question, were there other blacks involved in tennis? Yes. Uh, that was the attraction. Is that not only did we uh, have the opportunity to interact with uh, successful black entrepreneurs, doctors, lawyers, business owners, but the sport in New York, at least, was uh, very much integrated already. So I learned very early that I could play against and compete against children, um, and this is this is the early 1950s.
So, was tennis, were there integrated tennis clubs in New York, or were you involved in tennis at clubs that were mostly predominantly black at that time?
That is exactly right. We were mostly uh, two locations in New York City that were predominantly for black players. One was the what we call the Jungle, the Asphalt Jungle on 151st Street and 7th Avenue. That was a Department of Parks location in Harlem. And the other was the 369th Regiment Armory on 142nd Street and 5th Avenue. That was an indoor facility where we played in the winter, and still the home of the Harlem Junior Tennis Program, even today.
Nice. What was your experience when you went to tournaments as a child? Were you involved in US LTA, I guess it still was at that time, or were you involved in ATA or a combination, or yeah, combination of both?
Yeah, it was mostly my competition days were mostly ATA because we were not permitted to play in USLTA tournaments. Um, we were just about breaking through every once in a while to play in the USLTA tournament, but it was not a very friendly environment. Um,
What does that
but
mean?
well, as an example, we would sign up for a tournament uh, by telephone or mail, send in an entry form, and when arriving at the tournament, when we were noticed by the tournament director, he'd tell us, "You're not in the tournament." And we say, "Yes, we are in the tournament. We entered. We confirmed by telephone." He said, "No, you don't understand. You're not in this tournament." So they would just,
Wow.
uh, those were the days. That's the experience that most of us had as kids back then.
Do you remember
Because
how
there was
that made
no,
you feel? Sorry, do you
Pardon me?
remember how that made you feel at the time?
Oh, maybe. Well, in my particular case, coming from New York and not having experienced this abject racism before, it made me angry. Um, some people, like as you know, Arthur grew up in the segregated South, was much more accustomed to it and accepted it as just a hurdle that he would go around or jump over. But for me, I got angry about it.
And then how did that anger inform the work that you're doing now?
Well, I guess I stayed with it, So, um, in spite of the fact that we were denied opportunity, uh, we had mentors that helped get through it. Doc Johnson was one of those. Sidley Wellen was another. I mean, we realized that not everybody was uh, racist and biased against us. Not everybody was, but we had to deal with those that were. We had to learn how to play on their terms and on their turf. We had to learn to accept bad calls and racial indiscretions and take it in stride. And we learned those. Doc Johnson was a master that insisted that we play tennis in such a way that uh, we create incidents. If you got a bad call, you walked away from it. His philosophy was if a ball was 3 inches and got called out, then put it a foot in. Not just not assault or confront your opponent, because what was perceived to be a characteristic of one of us to all of us in the future. So a tournament director would see that is why we don't want these black kids in the tournament.
Mm.
So we were charged with accepting it all in stride. And if you did not, Doc Johnson would kick you out of camp. I should add that.
That's
He
a
was,
lot of
as I said, he was the
responsibility.
taskmaster.
That's a lot of responsibility to put on a young person.
We handled it, didn't we?
Can you talk about what the standard of play was at those black tennis clubs? I hear stories of people like Jimmy McDaniel having competitions against those that were established stars. And what did that look like, and how did it feel to you as some of those opportunities were starting to open up?
Well, let's keep in mind that the Cosmopolitan, where Jimmy McDaniel played that Don Budge, what they call the first interracial match, was held at the Cosmopolitan Tennis Club in Harlem. That club closed in 1951 before I started playing. It went out of business because the property was too valuable. They put an apartment building there. But opportunities were beginning to present, and be advised, most of the time the problems with the players. The players have always been the solution. The problem was the administrators, the tournament directors, the USLTA. But, so, as I said, parents and players have always been the solution to the problem. As example, with Alice Marble challenging the USTA to allow Althea to play in the national championships. She was a well-respected, nationally ranked player that held the USLTA's hands to the fire. And that was just one example of how the players wanted to play tennis. That's it.
Okay, let's just fast forward just a little bit, because I want to get into some of the programming that existed. And I know you spent time at Dr. Johnson's house and his camp at one point in time, and then developed a friendship with Arthur Ashe that led into your being involved in the Ashe Bollettieri Cities program. Can you tell us about that?
Well, yeah, I met Arthur and many of the more talented black kids at Doc Johnson's. That was the objective of his program, was to bring the most talented minority children to train against one another in Lynchburg, and to use his home and his training facility as a base from which to travel to tournaments around the country. So that is where I met Arthur and many others, and that led to a friendship, and Willis Thomas and others, that led to a friendship that has endured through now. And it led to my belief that we could replicate Doc Johnson's place. I tried to do it unsuccessfully because I didn't have the financial support, but I opened my own sleepover academy in New York many, many years later, and it is that caused Arthur and Nick Bollettieri to invite me to take the reins of a new program that they were starting called the Ashe Bollettieri Cities Tennis Program, or ABC. That program later morphed into the Arthur Ashe Safe Passage Foundation, which survived through Arthur's the rest of his life.
What was the mission of that program? Was it tennis specific, or was there a greater mission than just getting kids to be exposed to the sport of tennis, which was a traditionally upper middle class white sport?
Let me say that through my entire life, the mission has never been only to teach tennis. It has always been to keep kids in school, to keep them off drugs, to provide them with mentoring, to, for example, when we launched our first ABC program in Newark, New Jersey, we had every lesson ending with a what we called an off-court session. And that was a session that allowed every child to have an opportunity to talk with a mentor for the last 15, 20 minutes of the lesson session, and or bringing in a professional of some style to come and talk to the kids about dental care, the perils of drugs and alcohol, immunizations, after school academic tutoring. We are doing all of those things, but we actually started those in 1988. In fact, we had, in the city of Newark alone, we had a relationship hospital we called Urban Health Net, which was a program where doctors came in. We have always had education and healthy lifestyles as the primary focus of our programs.
Can I ask if there was anything provided to the parents of the kids that participated, or were you solely focused on those children?
You know, it's interesting you should ask that question, because we focused almost entirely on the kids back then, because we were in the inner city. The kids actually showed up at the tennis courts alone. Today, I'm running the voluntary tennis and learning program that I mentioned earlier, and that brings the parents into it, realizing that it is the parents that have to deliver these children to our program, pick them up late after school, and the parents are the ones that appreciate the importance of their children going to college. Many of the parents themselves never went to college, and most of them, if you had asked them 2 years ago, do you expect your child to go to college, would say no. For one reason, nobody in the family has ever done it, and secondarily, because they couldn't afford it if the kid wanted to go. Mm. But now with the advent of the relationship with the University of South Florida, the parents are anxious to get the kids in our program, and in fact are bringing the kids 10 miles every day after school, 4 days a week, right now, because they see that this rainbow at the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, I guess you'd say.
That's great.
My first interaction with you, Bob, came when I was working at Sportsman's Tennis Club in Boston back sometime around 1990 or something. I think we ran into each other at 4th of July weekend, actually, down in New Haven, Connecticut. And Sportsman's was a place where, and still is, but which was very integrated at the time. And because it was just about excellence, those that cared about excellence, no matter what stripe they were, said that they wanted their kids involved. And I believe that program benefited all of the kids who were there because they had interactions with people who were different, came from different neighborhoods than they were. And going forward, as they ran into people who were from different backgrounds, they were more open to kind of finding out about the person first rather than, oh, wow, this is somebody who isn't like me. They said, oh, this is somebody who is like someone that they had met at an earlier age. Do you believe that there are enough programs who have that kind of mission going forward and that are integrated, or are you finding that most of the programs are pretty segregated on both sides of the fence at this point?
Well, I think both things are true. I think most programs are pretty segregated, because the mission of the black programs is to elevate the lives of black kids. So I think that the programs are segregated to a great extent, but never have we excluded white kids from the program if they wanted to participate. And that's important to say. The ATA never excluded whites from participating in their tournaments. And many did, as you know, Duey. Many whites did, and it's been a wonderful thing for all of us. to have had those people come and sit down beside us and learn from us and have us learn from them and realize that we're all pretty much the same. But I think, programs like mine, programs like Sportsman and other programs, and I'm involved with many programs around the country. I think the primary is to give urban children the opportunity that we had to grow and to be and to have self-confidence and to enrich our lives and become productive adults. That is the mission of the programs that I'm familiar with. And at the same time, we use tennis as the hook to do that.
When you say urban children, is that regardless of race or background, or
It is.
is it?
Okay. It is, and it always has been, regardless.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's important to point that out, right? It's important for our viewers to understand that you're not just serving one segment of one particular community. You're serving all segments of that particular community. Whoever wants to come is welcome.
That is true. Let me give you an example of that. The current program that I run with the Panda Foundation, by the way, that's the name of my company, foundation, deals with a charter school. We have 90 kids in the program. It is what they call a Title I school, which means that the large majority of the student population lives at or below the poverty level. 90% of the kids are Hispanic, or 90% of the kids are Hispanic. But anybody is welcome. And but the school has 500 children in it. We only have 80 or 90 of them. So we have met with all of the parents, and the parents that are most likely to take advantage of our program because of our relationship with the colleges are those that would never expect the child to be able to go to college. So they're now imagining a revolution in their family history.
That's awesome.
You felt like, I think I can speak for you a little bit, that it was important that when you get these kids involved that you let them go as far as their talent and desire allowed, otherwise you were showing them another roadblock. And consequently, you started a program called Black Dynamics at IMG, which took some of those most well-trained, highest performing black kids and brought them together in an environment where they could excel and even have a real shot at being professionals. What was your reasoning behind that program, and how did it work?
Duey, I came up with an idea that I still think today, I mean, it's 2020 now, I still think it was the most brilliant idea I've ever had in my life. The idea was to, I was solitary IMG Tennis Academy in Bradenton, Florida, and they had what was at the time the most recognized training environment for juniors in the world. And they had adult programs as well. And my idea was to invite black families that love tennis to vacation at the Voluntary Academy. And I had arranged with the administrators that 30% of every dollar that I brought in could be channeled into supporting scholarships for the most talented black kids in America. So essentially what I was bringing the most talented kids in America, black kids in America, to train against the most talented children from around the world, the junior development. And even today, I think it was a great idea, but I just didn't have the marketing to get the parents to spend their vacations there. Um, but it was a brilliant idea, and from it came Jamia, and you know
Jamia Jackson.
Jamia Jackson and Shanae Perry, and thank you for that help. I'm getting older, as you can see, even while we're broadcasting here. And Jennifer Magley, and we had about half a dozen kids that did turn pro. Jamia and Shanae ended up the Federation Cup for United States. So we had our own coaches. We provided the children with housing, meals, and we essentially had our own coaches in training and fitness, and it was just a wonderful program. I wish somebody would do it again, but it would require a commitment by the owners of the facility to pull it off, and at that time I had that support.
What do you think, Bob, it's going to take for tennis to truly become integrated? We had Leslie Allen on last week, and we talked about an article that she wrote in response to USTA's recent statement on diversity and inclusion, and kind of taking issue with USTA saying that it was committed to those two issues. Do you feel tennis is committed to diversity and inclusion? And if not, what do we need to do to make it so?
Well, we are responsible for part of the problem. So let's not excuse all of us.
We who?
We people of color. We people of
Okay.
color. I mean, we are supposed to be providing the country with the most talented, the gifted children. Okay. So to back up and answer your question, do I think that we're doing everything we can? No. I don't think the country is, and I don't think we are personally. We have an organization known as the American Tennis Association, which is no longer the focus of the development of minority children. They're primarily, and I raised all kinds of heck about this in the last 10 years, and my voice has not been heard. But business developing talented children. Now we're in the business of running, the ATA is in the business of running an annual tournament. And that's pretty much it. As for the USTA, we've got programs around the country that are working very hard to develop talented children, but they need financial help. Anybody that thinks that it's easy and affordable to become a darn good tennis player is delusional. The sport is still is very expensive deal. I mean, you can check with all kinds of USTA alone will tell you that to develop a child into a nationally ranked junior will take between $80,000 and $150,000 a year. Now, if you imagine that the average, yeah, and if you imagine that the average child family makes $55,000 a year, it tells you who's able to afford. I mean, it's a pricey proposition, and the programs that are developing these children need support that they're not getting either their own community in many cases or from the governing body of tennis in America.
So, consequently, do you think that there's?
I think it's.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, do you think that consequently there is greater value in introducing the sport of tennis, but concentrating on the things that maybe allow you to work with people at a level that doesn't require an $80,000 to $150,000 a year investment? And is that what tennis truly should be?
That's what I've been doing for the last 30 years. With the exception of Black Dynamics, where I was trying to provide an opportunity to the most talented black kids in the country. The majority of my adult life has been spent in trying to elevate the lives of these children so that they became productive adults. Uh, but, as we all can imagine, there is a great deal of talent in the inner cities, physical talent. And if we're gonna entice that talent to come out and play tennis, that's going to cost money. And we have neglected to create a network that, let me give you an example. We have alumni of the ATA, from you, Duey, and I. We're alumni of the ATA whose talents could be used to help not only create and monitor the growth of programs, but to help generate sponsors for it. But nobody has brought us together to make that happen. You've got alumni of the ATA that are bankers, lawyers, people on Wall Street. Why have we not brought those people together and say, let's really provide some opportunity to those talented players that live in this country? We haven't done it.
So I'll ask you then why, because you asked the question. Do you have an answer? Why haven't we done it?
Because I don't think our leadership has that vision. I've tried to implant that vision into our leadership, but have been met with resistance and consternation. So I guess we're not ready for it yet.
It's interesting because I think you can look at what the Intercollegiate Tennis Association has done in the past year to engage college tennis alums to give back to the organization and give back to their university's tennis programs.
Right.
And, that could be maybe a model for what the ATA does. And if not the ATA, maybe there's some other vehicle to use to bring ATA alums together and, organize around a mission of giving back to the sport and bringing the funding necessary to kick off these programs and sustain them long term.
There's that issue. There's the other issue, Lisa, that you look at baseball. Baseball has minor leagues. Minor league players are paid. They don't make $1 million a year, but they're paid to stay in the sport. Mm-hmm. Football has the costs. Now they're talking about paying the athletes on these teams. You're not talking about this in tennis.
Right.
Your prime of the top players in the world are resistant to spreading out the prize money down to the number 500 level. If you're in the top 10 in the world, you're a multimillionaire. If you're at 500, you can't even hamburger.
You're paying to play. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So our sport has not evolved yet to the point where we are building the base of the pyramid as well as we should.
Interesting. Well, Dewey, we are, as usual, over our time allotment, but I hate to cut this off because it's an enlightening conversation. But I feel like in respect to Bob here and respect for our viewers, we should wrap things up.
Yeah, it's an ongoing conversation, and I would say we're not going to solve it right now because Bob and I have been having the same conversation for decades now. And we've come up with a lot of solutions that we've tried to put forth and get people to implement, as he said. And I've been part of some of those initiatives that he's done, and he's tried to push me out into leadership positions, but was resisted. And so thank you, Bob, for always being in my corner, and thank you for sharing those ideas with us here today.
You're welcome.
Fortunately, we're not going to get it all done.
please keep educating us, Bob, and please keep talking about the important work that you're doing. And if there's anything at Parenting Aces that we can do to help, we're here. We're a platform that's here just as I know Dewey feels with Tennis 2020. And of course, this show, we are here to be a platform to get information and knowledge out to those who love the sport like the three of us do.
Yep. Bob, where can we find out more information about the history of black tennis? Because I know you've been a curator of some of that. Where could someone go to research?
I created that website about over a decade ago. It's called blacktennishistory.com.
Great.
There is what I call breaking the seal moments. Those moments that changed the trajectory of tennis in the United States. And there's the history of the ATA and memorabilia and things you can read and see. And I'm still waiting to put 2 more videos back on my site, Duey, that you know what I'm referring to. So
there were blog talk radio conversations that have kind of gone away because
yes.
I haven't been active on the platform. So
okay, so
yeah.
But otherwise, www.blacktennishistory.com.
Fantastic.
Good, and I think we have quick graphics. It's pretty easy to remember blacktennishistory.com. And if somebody wants to reach us, I think we have some contact information for us. It is
very straightforward Lisa at parentingaces.com, deweyevans@gmail.com. If you have questions, if you have comments to follow up on this conversation today, if you have suggestions for future shows and guests, please reach out to us. We are all ears and welcome every bit of information that you want to send our way.
And Bob, if you can just hold on a second while we close out the show, we'll be right back with you. Thanks everyone for joining us.
So
I'm sorry. We forgot. Next, yeah.
Next
Lisa.
week, we've got Isu Ma'at coming on the show. Isu and I recently connected after he did a webinar through UTR a couple weeks ago, and we're really excited to have him come on and talk about his work with youth and tennis and getting kids involved in our sport and opening the sport to anybody and everybody that wants to play. So tune in next Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel. We'll be here for you.
We'll see you then. Bye now.